Hello, everyone. My name is Sanjana Katti, and I welcome you all to the very first session of Buds on STEM. Thank you for joining us today. I would like to begin with a small video which will introduce Buds on STEM. Hello, everyone. My name is Sanjana Katti. I'm a grade 10 student residing in Bangalore. Today, I would like to introduce my new initiative, Buds on STEM. What is Buds on STEM? As you know, STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. One may include disciplines such as medicine and education in the same broad category. My vision is to connect high school students to worldwide experts in these industries. I intend to do these through my online platform, and most importantly, these will be free. Always. My intention is not to sell anything here. As high school students, several of us are interested in pursuing a career in STEM disciplines. But what does it mean, really, to have a career in these disciplines? I do not know, and I don't think many of us know either. Buds on STEM aims to bridge this gap. Each month, I intend to invite an expert from an industry and ask them a few practical, real world questions, such as their background and how they got to where they are. What is a day like in their professional lives? What is their biggest motivation or what gives them the most satisfaction in their jobs or roles? What advice would they give to their 16-year-old self? How do they balance work and life? How do they handle setbacks and failures? If you find this interesting or have any suggestions, please feel free to shoot me an email. You will find my email ID here in this corner. Now, I understand all of us are super busy and we may not have time to attend all of these conversations each month. So, what do? Each of my conversations will be recorded and uploaded to my website, www.budsonstem.org. You can view this in your spare time, again, anytime, anywhere, for free. I look forward to you joining me in this journey. Thank you. Thank you all for watching the introductory video. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our very first speaker, Dr. Anupama Upasani. Dr. Anupama is a senior ophthalmologist at Max Hospital in Greater Noida. She heads the ophthalmology department there. Welcome, Dr. Upasani. I'm honored to have you at my event today. I request you to give us a brief introduction about yourself.
Thank you, Sanjana. I must appreciate that that's a very nice effort on your part. And I'm sure this effort will help lots of aspiring students. So as you said, a brief introduction about myself. I am Dr. Anupama Upasani. I have been practicing ophthalmology for the last 22 years in Delhi NCR. I have my own practice by the name of Indraprastha Eye-Tech Eye Clinic in Noida, which is again a 20-year-old practice. I specialize in the field of retina. I'm attached as a senior consultant and ophthalmologist and retina specialist to Max Hospitals. And I am also heading Yatharth Hospitals at Greater Noida in the field of ophthalmology. I have been the secretary of Noida Ophthalmological Society and a founder member of Women Ophthalmological Society. So that's a brief introduction about my own self. And maybe we can move on to the session.
Thank you, Dr. Anupama. That was wonderful. We are very pleased to have you with us today. I would like to begin with a few questions, which I'm sure most of us as high school students would have thought about at one point or another. So, when did you know that you wanted to become a doctor, and how did you make the decision?
Yeah, this goes back to when I was in my 5th class. I actually decided to become a doctor when I was in my 5th class. I don't know what motivated me at that point of time. Probably I was motivated by my grandfather, who was also a doctor. I never got to see him because he expired when I was a small child. But yes, I had heard stories about him as to how he treated patients, as to how he worked in his clinic and hospital. And that actually motivated me when I was in my 5th standard. And I had decided by then that yes, I will become a doctor. And as I reached my 10th standard, I got the syllabus for my pre-medical exams. And thereon, I started preparation for my pre-medical entrance, prepared in 11th and 12th for my entrance, got through. Since then, the journey has been a very passionate one with lots of ups and downs. But yes, it has been worth it, and I would say it has been a very passionate one.
Yeah, that's very inspiring. So next question is, if you were not a doctor, what other profession would you select?
If I were not a doctor, I would have been a doctor. Frankly speaking, this answer might seem absurd, but I actually did not leave a second choice for my own self. I would have done anything and everything to get into this profession because I was so motivated as a small child, and it was there within me that yes, I have to get into this. So, a doctor and only a doctor, that's all.
That's wonderful. Um, can you please describe a typical day in your profession?
My typical day starts at 5:30 in the morning. I get up, have my morning tea, followed by my daily routine of exercises, yogasana and pranayam, followed by morning walk, which is a routine every day. This lasts for an hour or so. Thereafter, my daily household chores. And when it's my OT, I usually start at 8 a.m. My cases are lined up by 8:30 a.m. in the operation theater. So I usually start operating by 8:30 a.m. My OT goes on till 11 o'clock in the morning. The routine elective cases are posted in the morning OT. Thereafter, I head towards my morning OPD. The OPD keeps on going till 2 p.m. in the afternoon. My morning OPD stretches from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. In between, if you have some emergency cases in the ICU or in the emergency where you get these trauma patients or sudden emergencies, we have to go and look up those emergencies, treat them. If we have any emergency surgeries in between, again we have to take them up. In the meantime, the OPD is carried on by the junior consultants, and the optometrists help them in the OPD work. Thereafter, I have my lunch around 2, and I again start my academic work by 4 p.m. in the evening. So my academic work includes studying journals, papers, case presentations. If we have any difficult case, I come and look up, study about it. So the academic thing goes on for an hour or so, and then I start my evening OPD at 5:30 in the evening, which goes on till 8 p.m. in the evening. So that's a typical day in my career.
Yeah, it sounds really busy actually. Um, what is the most difficult part of your job?
I would say there are several diseases which we come across which do not have a sound medical or a surgical treatment. So I would say these are the limitations of medical profession. Like we can treat 75% of the cases, there are still 25% of such diseases which do not have a sure shot medical or a surgical treatment. So in such cases, it's very difficult to explain to the patient or the attendant that yes, whatever modalities of treatment we are going to adopt, we may not be able to fully treat his disease, or we may not be able to give him a favorable outcome. So it's very difficult to explain to the patient and the relatives, because these days the expectations are 100%. Patients do expect 100% outcome from the doctors or from the hospital. So in such cases where there's a poor prognosis, it's very difficult to explain to the patients. Yes, of course, we take verbal consents with a video recording system in the room. We take written consents. We have the high risk consents also. So we have all these protocols in place. But yes, there are other extremes also. I still remember when we were in our MBBS days, we used to have these evening clinics. So evening clinics, we used to be allotted a case, and say 4 or 5 students would be studying over that case. We would study the signs, symptoms, come to a diagnosis, then tell the treatment. So we had to study that case and uh, you know uh, speak it out in front of the registrar. So what happened once when we were in our evening clinic, this patient, he was so smart. The moment we went to his bed and we started examining, he said, no, 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 I'll tell you all my symptoms. I have this, I have this murmur. My diagnosis is mitral stenosis. And these are the investigations which should be done on me. And this is my treatment. So then we said, how do you know this? He said, in the last 3 days, there are 50 students who have examined me, and probably by their examination and this thing, he knows what is his diagnosis and what is his treatment. So, you come across such situations also. So that's it.
Yeah, this is something special about medicine. Um, What kind of setbacks do you have to deal with, and how do you handle them?
Setbacks or mistakes do happen when we were in our residency days, or maybe in the junior, as a junior consultant, we used to do mistakes when we were seeing patients in our OPDs or we were operating in our OTs. But I would say complications or mistakes are a part of any journey. If you encounter any complications when you're doing a surgery, we have these recording systems these days. Whenever we do a surgery, it gets recorded. So what we can do is we can go back to the recording, see each and every step, analyze it properly as to where we did a mistake and what we could have done in a different way so that the outcome would have been different. So I would say revisiting and analyzing any situation is important. And once you know as to where you did a mistake, where you have a this thing setback, then you are not going to repeat it again. The same advice I would give to the students also, to take up mock tests and do as many practice questions as they can, so that they know what are their weak points and they can, rectify those weaker areas.
Yeah,
So that is how we can overcome all these setbacks and failures, or I won't call it as failure, I will call it as mistakes. So revisiting and analyzing is important.
yeah, definitely. How did the pandemic affect the medical profession, and what specific care are you taking in your job to handle the pandemic?
Yes, the pandemic did affect us in the sense that we had to take extra precautions. Of course, we had a lot of patients. Were sort of overworked during the pandemic because, I would say that people keep falling ill, and illness or sickness is one such thing which is never going to stop. We will keep getting patients. So sort of this profession is recession proof, or maybe it's insulated. But yes, we had to take extra precautions. We had to wear double masks. We had to wear these gloves, OT scrubs, the OT gown in our OPD, and with a face shield and protective goggles. And with all this protective gear, examining a patient was a challenge in itself. Then again, with all that protective gear, operating in an operation theater again was a big challenge. But somehow we got used to it, and now it has become a way of life. Because when you wear all those face shield and your protective glasses, your visibility gets hampered. So, but then you're not able to speak also with the double mask and 95 mask. Breathing again becomes difficult. And when you're operating with that PP kit, you are actually sweating inside and you're operating. So it's a matter of time. We have got used to it now, and now it has become a routine.
Yeah, it sounds
It's a big
difficult.
challenge.
Yeah, it sounds difficult. We hear that medical profession is a 24/7 job and without any time for personal life. So how do you balance work and life?
See, medical profession is tough. I would say any other profession is a 24/7 job. Yes, in medicine, you have to study hard. Once you get through, you have to work hard. But then you have to be a juggler. You have to juggle between your professional life, your personal life, and the more efficiently you do it, you are successful. You have to do multitasking simultaneously. You cannot compromise on your professional front. You cannot compromise on your home front also. You cannot compromise on the career of your children also. So everything has to be done. You have to be very good at multitasking. And I would say a good support system goes a long way. You should have a good support system at your office. Suppose when I'm reaching early morning for my OT, if my cases are lined up, if my technician is a well-trained technician, he keeps the OT ready, he keeps the pre-operative cases ready, he does all the paperwork, then things become easy. Similarly, in the OPD, if your cases are lined up, if your optometrist or if your junior doctor has done the preliminary examination before you start your OPD, then things become much easier for you. So that's how you should have a good support system. You should have a good support system at your home front also. A good house help or a good babysitter or a good cook will definitely go a long way. Of course, you have to supervise and you have to see that things are getting done in a proper way, in an efficient way. But yes, a good support system does help you in managing both the fronts efficiently. So you gradually get a knack of it.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Um, do you sometimes get nervous when dealing with a critical patient, and how do you handle it?
Yes, when we were in our initial few years, we used to get nervous when we used to get critical patients or we had a difficult case in the operation theater. But gradually, we do overcome these fears over a period of time. Like I still remember in our college days, we had this subject of physiology, and we had to prick our finger and take out a drop of blood for doing the experiments. So this experiment used to be done on a drop of blood from your own finger, and we used to do the clotting time and prothrombin time on this drop of blood. So one of my friends, she was very afraid of breaking her finger, and every time she would borrow a drop of blood from her friends, saying that yes, I'm very much afraid of it. And then gradually, over a period of time, by the end of the semester, she became so brave that yes, she would prick her finger in one go and in fact lend her drop of blood to all her friends. So that's how you overcome your fears. It's basically by practice and doing it over and over again, you tend to overcome your fears. And especially the surgical branches, where in the initial few years, yes, you do surgeries, you might have some difficulties. So you gradually overcome all these fears over a period of time. Especially when you're operating in operation theaters and something goes wrong, you should be receptive to the advice of your technicians or maybe your junior doctors. Sometimes they might give you a very useful advice. Your OT technician who has assisted more than 1,000 cases might tell you some good tip in the middle of the surgery. So you should be receptive to all such things. Although the final decision is yours, but you should be receptive, I would say. So that is how you can overcome your fears.
Yeah, yeah, that's really nice to hear. Some people feel that medicine as a career is difficult to get in and difficult to pursue. What is your opinion about this, and is it really worthwhile?
Difficult to get in, yes, I would say it's difficult to get in, but nothing comes for free in this world. Everybody has to strive hard to take up a particular career. I would say, yes, there are lots of aspirants who want to go into the medical career, the seats are few. But then my advice is start your preparation early. Once you start your preparation early, you get a lot of time to prepare. Stay motivated, I would say. Every student should stay motivated. You should have a positive attitude when you're preparing for your entrance exams. Don't be nervous about it. So positivity goes a long way. Be as motivated as you can. So this goes a long way. Once you are into the job, or once you are into the mbbs or your residency days, then yes, every day is a big challenge in itself. But then I would say you have to take those challenges head on, and you do enjoy your journey also. At every step you must enjoy your journey. We used to have the college festivals, the sports week, which we used to enjoy. Yes, we used to study hard, work hard, but at the same time enjoy the college activities also. I still remember when in our first professional we had this subject of anatomy, where we have the dissection hall where we dissect on the human body. And once we were dissecting the brain, so brain has some structures called medulla and pons. We used to cut slices of medulla and pons and examine these slices under microscope. So one of my friends, he was so witty, he said, I need these spare parts, and he put those slices in his pencil box and took them home. So we all had a very hearty laugh. So that's how you can keep enjoying things along with your work. And I'm sure it goes a long way. Once into your profession, once into your practice, you start treating your patients in your OPD, in your OT. If you have a successful outcome after a very difficult surgery, it gives you a real kick. And I would say there's nothing more satisfactory than treating a patient, and at the end of the day, this satisfaction is more than anything else. So I would say the entire journey is definitely worth it. A happy patient is the best thing to happen at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's really encouraging, definitely. Um, so, what is your opinion about healthcare and medical careers in India versus abroad, like in United States or the United Kingdom?
Yeah, there is a difference between the medical career in India versus abroad, maybe US or UK. In India, probably in the government colleges, the infrastructure may not be as good as it should be. You may not be getting the latest machines or the latest investigative or the treatment modalities, which you might get in the private colleges in India, because yes, they have a good fundraising system in place. But if you do your medicine from US or UK, you're definitely going to get good machines, good infrastructure, good equipment. So you get to learn on good equipment. But at the same time, I would say that the population pool in India is a vast population pool. The patient pool is a vast pool. So you get to see a variety of cases in the OPD. Like in one OPD, you will be seeing at least 100 to 200 variety of cases, sometimes very unusual cases, very rare cases, and that gives you a really good exposure. And similarly, in the operation theater, also in the surgical branches, one OT, you might get, say, 20 cases to operate, a variety of cases. So you get a good hands-on in the surgical and the investigative modalities. Probably the patient population might be less in US or UK, so a good hands-on may not be available. So these are the pros and cons of the Indian system versus the US system.
Yeah, that's very informative. Thank you. Um, the next question is, what do you think are the basic traits or characteristics to be successful in your profession?
The basic trait, whether you are a student or whether you are into your practice, is perseverance, I would say. Perseverance is one thing which is very, very essential. Keep on doing the job till the time you do not succeed. Do not give it up. Giving up is the biggest mistake which we do in life. Maybe one more attempt can make us successful. So I would say perseverance is the first and foremost thing. Second is patience. In our profession, we have to have patience while dealing with the patients. You might have a very hectic day, you might undergo very stressful situations, but still you have to have patience with the patients and the attendants, because why? They are sick. A sick person is coming to you, and you have to be very patient while examining him, while explaining him his disease, as to what is his treatment plan, this, that. So one has to have patience. Although you might be very tired, you might have undergone a very hectic schedule throughout the day, but then you have to deal with every patient in a very patient way, I would say. Another important thing is communication skills. So you have to be vocal about everything. You have to communicate your point across to the patient and to the attendants. So communication skills are very important. You have to explain him his prognosis, as to whether his prognosis is good or not so good. And you have to put your point across to the patient and the attendants. So communication skills are very important. Then you should have a good knowledge about the subject, and you should be confident about your knowledge. You should have confidence when you are communicating with the patient or when you are in your OT, OPD, etc. Because the patient has come to you with a faith, and till the time you are not confident, how will you instill confidence in the patient? So the patient has come to you with a faith, and so you should be confident enough to instill confidence in him. Another important thing, the last one, is ethics. Ethics is also very important. Ethics, at following ethics at your workplace, whether it's with your colleagues, whether it is in your treatment plan, whether it is your patient. So work ethics is again the most important thing. So these are a few traits which make you a successful medical professional.
Yeah,
And I'm sure you all can do it.
thank you. That's really like inspiring to hear. Thank you. What are the advantages or disadvantages of having your own medical practice or versus working in a corporate hospital?
Yes, your own practice gives you the flexibility. It gives you the flexibility of your OPD, your OT. If you have your practice, you can schedule your OPD, OT according to your, suppose you are attending a conference. You might like to post your cases before the conference or maybe after the conference. If they are elective surgeries, you might post them one day before or one day after. But this flexibility is there only in some branches. Like you can have your own practice in a few branches, say medicine or pediatrics or gastroenterology or maybe ophthalmology, ENT. So these are the branches where you can have your own clinic or your own center. But there are certain branches like cardiology, nephrology, neurology, where you have to have a hospital-based practice. So a hospital attachment where you have an ICU, an intensive care unit, or a CCU is essential for branches like cardiology, nephrology, neurology, etc. So now coming on to your own practice, you have to put up the infrastructure in place. You have to put all the machines, the latest equipment for your OPD chamber for your operation theater. Then you have to have a good staff. You should see that your staff is working efficiently so that they can manage the patients in a much better way. And you have to have panels and TPS, because these days everybody has an insurance policy and they like to get treatment done by insurance. So you have to take up the panels and TPS also. So all this involves a lot of time, money, and energy, which you have to invest when you have your own practice. At the same time, if you are attached to a corporate hospital as a full-timer, you get everything ready-made. You get a ready-made OPD, you get a ready-made OT, you get your staff from there only, from the hospital. Then they will promote you, they will do your marketing. So you get all things ready in place. But yes, you have the pressures of performing when you are attached as a full-timer to a corporate hospital. They will be giving you targets to achieve, and sometimes the targets can be so unrealistic that the pressure usually mounts on. It starts affecting you, it starts affecting your physical and mental health. So I would say a combination of the two works in a very good way. Like I am pursuing, I have my own practice also, and I am attached to corporate hospitals also. So maybe a combination of the two is the optimum way out, I would say.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, what advice would you give to your 16-year-old self?
If I look back, yes, I was a very career-oriented person. I was into my studies and work. I think I should have devoted much more time to my extracurricular activities, my sports activities. But yes, no regrets. I fared well in my career, and today I'm happy with whatever I
Okay,
am.
thank you. Um, what do you do to keep on like increasing your knowledge and be up to date with the advancements that's occurring in your field?
Medical science has been advancing very fast. Like whatever we learned in our residency days, that's all obsolete now. Any investigation modality or any treatment modality, it's all obsolete. Every 2 years, you have a new treatment in place for the same disease. So one has to be updated. You have to keep on attending conferences. You have to keep on reading journals, doing your papers and presentations and publications. So one has to keep on doing the academics, has to be a part of your daily routine. Then learning, I would say, is a lifelong process. Whenever you think that, yes, this is the end of it, learning, I know everything, that is the time you stop, your brain stops working, and you stop learning. So learning is a lifelong process. You have to be receptive to everything. Like you are working in your OPD or OT, sometimes you might get good input from your junior consultant or from your OT technician. So be receptive to whatever comes your way, and you can learn from each and every person and each and every situation which comes across your way. So I would say learning is very important, and it's an ongoing process throughout
Yeah,
the life. You have to keep learning and update yourself. That's very important.
yeah, yeah. I'm pretty sure all of us can take something from that. And one final question, Dr. Anupama. What final piece of advice would you give to the students who are currently in high school?
Yes, I would say that lots of aspiring students have been watching this webinar. I would say that choose your subjects wisely. First and foremost is choose your subjects wisely. Take up the subjects which you're interested in. If you're interested in medicine, go for that. If you're interested in engineering, take up those subjects. If you're interested in law or finance, take up those subjects. Don't take anything by pressure, because if you take up by interest, it will become fun learning the subject and taking it up as a career. If you are taking it up by as a pressure, then it will become a burden. And to all the parents out there, my advice would be that don't pressurize your child. Let the child take up a subject in which he is interested, and then you can actually perform better. Now once you have taken up your subject, be motivated as you can be, and be positive about it instead of being nervous. So positivity helps you in a good preparation of the subject, and it helps you in scoring better. These days you have to study smart. I would say study smart rather than study hard. You should study in an exam oriented way. You look up the question papers, you look up previous year tests, you take up mock tests, and prepare accordingly. So you have to study smart. Not, it's not essential you give 24 hours in a day for your studies. You might give just 10 hours a day, but then you have to do a smart preparation for your entrance test. Thirdly, take up all these mock tests which are available online for your entrance examinations. And once you take up these mock tests, you know, yes, where you are going wrong, what are your weaknesses. Then you can concentrate on those particular chapters and improvise those chapters. So that's another important way by which you can prepare yourself thoroughly for the entrance examinations. Lastly, I would say you have to be a powerhouse of energy. Whatever profession you take, not just medicine, you have to have good food. You have to take at least 6 hours of sleep. I've seen students, they keep awake the whole night, and then on the day of the Viva, they are so confused. So have good food, good sleep, at least 6 hours of sleep. Take up some exercise regime also. At least 10 to 15 minutes of exercise every day is essential. It builds up your stamina, and that will help you in preparing yourself for the examinations also. So lastly, I would say think that yes, I can, and that's the most important thing one should think. And I'm sure you all have the ability to do it. So just be motivated and go ahead.
Okay, thank you, doctor. That was a very inspiring and enlightening session. I'm sure most of us have a much better idea of what it means to pursue a career in medicine and especially ophthalmology. Um, at this point, I would like to open the floor for the audience to ask any questions they might have in their minds. They can either unmute themselves and answer or message me personally. I can read them out. It's up to you.
I think there are a few questions in the chat box. Probably, Sanjana, you can pick up those questions which have come to you in the chat box.
Yeah. Yeah. I see a few. Were you ever scared of dissecting like animals or humans as a part of your medical college curriculum? And if so, how did you handle it and overcome such fears?
Yes, the first subject in the first year is anatomy, where you have this dissection of human bodies. And I still remember the first day we went into a dissection hall. Yes, we had those fears and apprehensions. But then gradually you tend to overcome all those fears, you start dissecting, and then you get so used to it that, it seems like any other casual thing you are, any other routine thing. So I would say it's just a matter of time and you get used to it.
Yeah. There's another question. Typically, medicine has a very tough competition, and people are worried that if they don't make it, what are they going to do? So, what would be your advice to them?
See, medicine is very tough. At the same time, as I have already told you that yes, the journey is worth enjoying. You mean to ask if you are not able to go into the entrance test, or after taking up medicine or MBBS, you don't do fair in your career? What do you want to ask? Like, I would answer say both ways. If you're not able to make into your medical entrance, there are various other things also. Yes, you can take up some alternative professions. You can take up biology as a subject, and you can do your post graduation in say botany or zoology, and take up masters and PhD in botany zoology. That's one option. Then if you have already taken up MBBS and you do not want to do practice, you can take up the hospital administration thing also. You have masters in hospital administration, which is again a very good thing. And I would say you can go into biotechnology also. Once you have done your MBBS, you don't want to do a specialization in any surgical or medical field, you can take up biotechnology, or you can take up biochemistry also. These are also the alternative branches.
Okay, thank you. There's another one. How did you decide that you wanted to get in ophthalmology and why not any other fields?
Yeah, actually, I would say it both ways. After you do your MBBS, you have an entrance test for getting into the post graduation. So it basically depends upon your marks as to how you fare in that entrance test. So accordingly, every year this thing changes, grade changes. Sometimes your medicine is on the top, sometimes surgery is on the top, sometimes you have radiology on the top of it. So I chose ophthalmology as I was interested in that, and plus I was getting a few other branches apart from ophthalmology. But out of all the branches which I was getting, like say orthopedics and ophthalmology and ENT, and gynecology. I chose ophthalmology because I was, yes, definitely interested in ophthalmology as a career. And basic thing which motivated me for taking up ophthalmology is flexibility. We have these elective things in ophthalmology, very few emergencies. Of course, we do handle emergencies, but yes, the elective things give us the flexibility in our OPD and OT schedule. So that's how I took up ophthalmology.
Okay, thank you for that. The next question is, as a high school student, how do we know the subject of our interest?
See, when you're in your high school, say 9th, 10th, you know that whether you are interested in biology, you like reading up, taking up biology as a subject, or you like to do the mathematical calculations, you're good at mathematics. So your performance in your 9th and 10th class can be a deciding factor whether you will do well in your medicine as a career, or maybe you are good at mathematics, you are good at calculations, you can take up engineering as a career. Or sometimes people are good in other subjects also, like people take up commerce as a subject after their 10th class. So it's basically how you fare in those subjects and what you're interested in. That is how you know what subject you should be taking in your 11th or 12th.
Okay, thank you. And the next question is, so in today's world, pursuing MBBS alone is not sufficient. Till what level of degrees or qualifications do you think is required to have a successful career in medicine or even ophthalmology?
See, MBBS is something which is very basic these days. After MBBS, you have to give your PG entrance exam and go in for an MD or MS in a particular field. Once you do a specialization, maybe MD or MS in, say, medicine or pediatrics or ophthalmology or general surgery, thereafter you have the senior residency in place. So post-graduation, MBBS is 5 years. Then you have 1 year of internship, 4.5 years, and 1 year, that is approximately 5.5 years. Post-graduation is for 3 years. After doing a post-graduation, one has to do a senior residency for 3 years in a super specialized subject. Like ophthalmology has super specialization in, say, retina or cornea or glaucoma or neuro-ophthalmology. Similarly, if you take up medicine in your MD, you do a specialization either in gastroenterology or cardiology, neurology, nephrology. So you have either DM or MCH after medicine. So either you go for a DM MCH or you go for a senior residency after doing your post-graduation. So I would say totally it's around 12 years. But yes, the entire journey, I would say, don't get afraid of these long years. It's actually worth it. When you actually come into your practice, start treating patients, that is the time you actually enjoy it.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid of the long years, I would say. It's approximately 12 years.
Okay. Thank you. Hi. The next question is, during residency, we heard that the resident doctors have to work 36 hours at a stretch. Is this true? And if so, how does one handle such long hours?
Yes, I still remember we have these 24-hour duties when we are in our PG pursuing our post-graduation. So after the 24-hour duty, then you have another 12 hours of the next day, which is called as post-duty. So yes, sometimes you have to work for 30 hours at a stretch, sometimes 36 hours. But then yes, one has the ability, God has made us that way. We can stretch to any extent. It's just that we need to be motivated and we need to be positive about it. So we can stretch to any extent if we are motivated, I would say. So yes, we used to do duties, we used to do OTs, and all our colleagues in gynecology, they used to do the operation theater duties for 12 hours in the night, and then next day they used to be working in the OPD for the next 12 hours. So it all comes as a part of the package, and one can do it, one has the ability to do it. I'm sure all of us have the ability to do it.
Okay. Thank you for that. Do you guys have any more questions? If you do, please feel free to unmute and ask.
Hello.
Yeah, hello.
Myself, Anil. I'm basically an engineer.
Okay.
First of all, it's really very good initiative. And really listening to Dr. Anupamaji, it was like we as engineers think that we have to update. There are a lot of things, newly happening, and things we know are obsolete. But now I know that even in case of medicine, it's very much the same. Uh, I don't have any more questions, but all I want to say is really good initiative, and thanks for your time, for sharing really important things for these students.
Yeah, I would like to thank the audience also and the initiative Sanjana has taken. I am sure this should go a long way. It's a very good initiative taken up by Sanjana, and I'm sure it should help all the students, in choosing their subjects, and it should go a long way.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Do any of you have questions? Please feel free to ask. You can unmute and ask. No more? Okay then. Okay. Thanks again, Dr. Anupama, for gracing this event with your presence. It was very informative, and I'm sure it'll help a lot of high school students like me as we make our career choices and plans.
Thank you so much, Sanjana, for inviting me here, and I would thank the audience also. And I'm sure it's a great initiative. I'm sure you'll be inviting people from various fields in the coming few months, and it should really help the students out there. Thank you so much for calling me on this platform.
Thank you so much for coming. And thank you all for attending today's event. I hope it was useful for you. Please stay tuned for the next event, which will be scheduled in December with another expert in the STEM field. Today's conversation with Dr. Anupama will be uploaded on my website, www.buzzonstem.org, and it will also be available on the Buzz on STEM YouTube channel. So please do visit it, and I look forward to your comments. Thanks again, and I hope I'll see you soon. Take care and stay safe. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.